Hello, everyone, and welcome to Know the Code Show. Today, it's Wednesday, so it's a live training session again. And today we're going to have some fun. Well, we always have fun. We are going to continue our saga on learning about quality code and the methodologies that go into refactoring and how you think about code construction and architecture. So the whole process of refactoring code and the reason why that we're in WordPress core is to illustrate the thought processes that you go through. So when you're looking at code, what constitutes quality, right? How do you break code down into the smallest little microprocesses so that then you can build it back up again so that you end up with code that is skinny, it's purposeful, it's reusable, and has all of the earmarks of what quality is. And we've been teaching this over the last several episodes, walking through this process. And the way that we're doing it, for those who are new with us here today, is we're right in core. And if I scroll up here, you can see here is do action. And do action and apply filters are basically the same function. There are a couple little differences, but for the most part, we see a lot of wet code in here, which means it's very redundant. There are redundant coding patterns and redundant code. So what we're doing is we're refactoring that out in a quest to get this narrowed down to something that is very reusable, right? That's our process. That's what we're trying to do. So as I'm walking through and I'm teaching you about this process, I'm trying to get into your head about how you think about your code construction. This is not a bashing of WordPress core. Instead, we're using it as a vehicle so that when you write code, your code is of the highest quality possible. That's your quest, right? No matter what package you use out there that you want to pull into your project, into your application, the stuff that you customize, the code that you're writing, that needs to be of the highest quality that you can get. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Today, I know this is going to be weird, but see this little line of code here that I have highlighted? We're going to spend the entire episode talking about how refactoring this one line. I know, it seems weird. One line of code, one show. But believe me, there's a lot that goes into just this one line of code. So let's real quick talk about when you come down to this line of code, how readable is this? Right? One of the earmarks of quality is it readable? Can I come to this line of code and know what it's doing? I know I can't. I have to sit and I have to think about it. I have to go through the process of, okay, first of all, what is arg? What's this? What's the purpose of each one of these conditionals? And there are 4 conditionals in this one line. What is it trying to do? Okay. So part of quality coding is to abstract this part away. Let this go off and do all of its little conditional checks and come back and report to me a true or false. It's an if, so all that I expect is a true or false. But I'd like to know what this thing is. What's it doing? So that's the very first code challenge I gave you, is identifying what it's doing. What's its purpose? Right? And then we're going to abstract it away. Okay, so what is its purpose? Now, we've talked about this briefly back in, actually, I think we talked about it quite a bit. Back in episode, I think it was 14, where we went through and we discussed what was going on here with assignments by reference or by value. Well, let's come up and deal with this guy. What is it doing? Well, let's walk through systematically. You'll find that that's how I like to do things. We break it down and then we systematically, incrementally walk through to understand. What's its purpose? Well, we know that it's checking if arg is an array. Well, first thing, what the heck is arg? Let's scroll up. We get what gets passed when you do when do action is executed in your code is tag is an event name, and really tag variable should be called what? Event name, right? variables should be named specifically by the data that they hold. In this case, it's an event name. It's loop start, init, all of those things are event names. And then there are callbacks which are registered to those event names. So you can also pass in a series of arguments. With do action, they're just looking at the very first one that gets passed in, and it's set to an empty string, which means it's completely optional, and you can have more of them. So you can have a lot of different arguments if you wanted passed in. If we scroll down, so now we know that arg is the first variable that's passed into it. So we check, is it an array? Yes, if it is, then we go to the next check. No, it's not. This whole conditional then is false, and it skips down to the else. Okay, so let's assume it is an array. Next check, we do a count. So an array has a certain amount of elements in it, which could be 0, meaning it's an empty array, all the way up to however much data you can store. So we're trying to do a count. We want to know how many elements, and these are first level elements within the argument. How many elements are there? And it's checking to see if there is what? 1. So it wants to know if there's this, yep, I have an array and I only have 1 element. Okay, if that's true, let's assume it's true. We'll go to the next one. We're checking is set. The same thing that you could do with array key exists, which would be to check that the key, in this case, is 0. Does that exist? Remember, arrays can be keyed by an index number. And what's that? It's an indexed array, or by a string. And then you get an associative array, but they're all keyed. So here we have arg, and we're checking that the first element is keyed by 0. Okay, yep. So that's how we're expecting the construction of this array to be. The next thing we're checking is it an object? Right? So that first element is an object. So what does that tell us? It tells us that this entire function is checking to see if there's an object wrapped inside of an array, that there's one object in there, one element, and it's wrapped inside of an array. That's what it's checking for. And you can see they even put a little comment out here. Whenever there's a comment, what do I always say? Inline comments mean refactor, because you shouldn't have to have inline comments. Your code should be so readable that there is no reason to have inline comments, period. Okay? All right, so we now know the purpose of this thing. So we need to come up with a purposeful name. What constitutes the characteristics of a purposeful name? Well, first of all, it's a function. And functions are action-based. That means verb. Use things like is array. Oh, look at that. Is array. Right there. Is object. It's a verb. The is contains, has, that's indicating to you the type of the behavior. So what you're going to get back from it, right? That's what it's indicating back to you. So here, if we, with an is array, you know you're going to get a Boolean, right? Right? Doesn't that make sense? So it either is or it isn't. So it's a Boolean, true, false, on, off. Okay, that's what we want here. This if statement is a conditional, and this is a multi-conditional if statement. So it's a decision that's occurring, and we have a little decision tree. If this, else that. Okay. It needs to be, what else needs to constitute a purposeful name? So we need to know specifically the single responsibility purpose of that function. What is the purpose of the function? Okay. Here is object. You know it's going to tell you, is this an object or not an object? There's no guessing. That's what it's going to do. Count. You know it's going to count. A better name for count probably would have been count arguments or count elements in an array. That probably would have been a lot more clear. Um, is array tells you it's going to check. Am I an array or am I not? So it needs to be very clear as to the purpose. Okay. So for ours, what would we want to name this thing? Well, some names can be things like contains object wrapped inside of an array, is an object within an array, contains object wrapped in an array. All of those things tell you specifically what it does. It contains an object wrapped in an array. That's exactly what this thing is. So you can pick any of those names. There's nothing here that says, Tanya says, I have to just pick this name. No, I'm giving you the earmarks, the characteristics, the attributes of a purposeful name. And then you need to then select something that in your mind specifically tells you, yep, this is what this thing does. It's self-documenting. I don't need an inline comment anymore. Anybody who reads my code, not just me, but anybody who reads it knows it's going to tell me, yep, this is an object wrapped inside of an array, true or false. All right. So what we're going to do is the next step of this is we're just going to copy this out because we're going to refactor it. Uh-oh, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow. Did that make some folks nervous? And we're just going to paste it over here. And we're going to, throughout this series or this episode, we're going to refactor this thing. Now we know we've got to return it, right? There we go. So now I've done that. And you notice what I called it is contains object wrapped in an array. Okay, let's put that in here. And we know right now, this is going to change, but we know right now, and I'm going to get rid of that inline comment. This is going to change a little bit, but let's just leave it for now. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this over so that we can see it. And here it is. Now we're going to spend some time and we're going to go through, and the first thing we're going to do is take a look at some differences. And I gave you some problem sets. I like to expand your brain, and you'll go through this in any of the training that we do, that it's not memorization here, guys. It's actually getting you to think. So I like to present you with different problem sets and have you think about them and then go off and actually do something with it. So the very first problem set that I gave you, I gave you 2 choices. And if I come over here, I have both choices. I have this one, which was choice A. Wait, was this choice A? Hold on one sec. Yep, that's choice A. And then this was choice B. And I asked you specifically to evaluate choice A and choice B and tell me which one had a higher quality value to it. In episode 13, I walked you through what constitutes quality, right? So if you're not sure, you need to take your buns back over to episode 13 and watch that baby, because we go through step by step as to what constitutes quality. So we're going to go through and we're going to evaluate. Let's start with choice A. Here's choice A. What's behind door number A? Okay, ignore the names on here. These are specifically to get you to think. So we're going to build it up. So the very first thing we're looking at is an array contains one element. And let's take a look and see. Quality check number 1 is the single responsibility. Nod your head up and down. Yes, it's single responsibility. This thing is just going to give you a Boolean based upon what this thing tells you, which is it's checking to see an array contains one element. That's what it's checking. Okay. Kiss. No, don't blow me a kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what kiss means. So, is this thing simple? Can you read it, and does simplicity jump out at you? What does it do? It's saying, if this is not an array, return false. Bail out of there. Okay. The next check. Is the array equal to 1? Does it have just one element in it? And it returns the value from that conditional check, because that conditional check gives you a true or false, right? So it returns that. So it's very simplistic in what it's doing. So yes, it is simple. Let's move on. Is it readable and purposeful? Uh, I would say, yeah. Look at this thing. It's telling you, it's checking for array contains one element. Okay. Is array. Am I an array? Do I have one element? I'm using PHP built-in functions. There's nothing else going on in here. It's very simplistic. You can read it. If you know PHP, you know what isArray is, you know what count is. So there's nothing custom built in here. There's nothing you have to figure out. It's just read it. So it's very simple. It's very purposeful. It's very readable. It says, hey, I'm so simple. I only have one thing going on. Is it dry? Is there anything repeating in here? Any repeating patterns? Any repeating code? No, nothing repeats. The only thing that does kind of repeat is I have a return and a return, but here I'm bailing out. Now, some would argue that what you could do is put this all in line and have one check. I am an array and I have this, and that's perfectly fine. Either way you do it is perfectly fine. Sometimes I like to bail out early with a very quick conditional that makes sure that I'm set up for the rest of this thing. And it depends upon what I'm processing after that. Sometimes it makes it a little bit more readable as to what's occurring, but that's up to you. It doesn't matter as long as you have both checks in there. Okay, so let's do our scoring. We have 4 criteria: single responsibility, yes; KISS, yes; readable and purposeful, yes; dry, yes. Oh, look at that. I got 4 out of 4. I got 100. Let's move on. Choice B. Let's see how this one compares. All right, so just to recap, we are looking at this. We want to know, am I an array and I only have one element? All right, that's what we're doing. So let's come down. We have the same bailout up here. No, I'm not an array. Get out of here because you don't want to check anything else. But then look what I do. I see this a lot in code. And there's another pattern that I see, and I'll show you that one here in a second. But let's look at this one first. So I'll see 1 is not equal. So this is a not equal check to count. Return false. And then, well, it is equal, so return true. Okay, let's walk through and do our quality check. Single responsibility, yes. KISS, no. Why? Because, first of all, look how many lines of code there are. And 2, why are we returning true and false when this thing right here is a true or false evaluation? We're going to get to that here in a second when we talk about repeating patterns. But the other thing of KISS is we are now looking at an inverse state and then inverting whether it's true or false. Okay, that's kind of confusing. So that gets into the repeatable and purposeful. When you look at this, you go, okay, I could do this, or I could just do that. Which one is more readable? I'm going to contend that this is much more readable than having to first invert. No, I'm not equal, return false. Okay, is that the state that I want? Do I want a true or false there? You see what I'm saying? Here, I know, yep, I'm equal to 1, I get a true. Nope, I'm not equal to 1, I get a false. That's exactly what we want this thing to do. Okay, let's move on. Do I see a repeating pattern? Yeah. Why? Because this if right here is a Boolean state. It's returning true or false, but then I go and I return an inverse of what that is. So that is a repeating pattern. That's wet. That's not dry. Oh, crud. So what did we score on this one? Single responsibility, yes. KISS, no. Readability, purposeful, no. Dry, no. Oh, we only got 1 out of 4. That's 25%. Bummer. So therefore, A is our better choice. Now, I told you that I'll show you another pattern. The other pattern that I see, let's just do it in a ternary. 1 equals count and arg to check. And the ternary that I see is true, false. Don't do this. Why? That's a repeating pattern because there is no reason to come down here and say in such a verbose way, true or false, because this already returns true or false, right? It's already telling you that. If it's true, that ternary portion runs. That's the if part. Else, I'm false. So it's a repeating pattern and there's no purpose for it. You want to do that over there. You want to do that instead. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. Now, we've already torn that one apart. Let's move on to problem set number 2. Problem set number 2, I give you 2 more pieces of code, and we're going to come down to here. And I'm going to uncomment these so that we can read them. And sorry, I just jumped around so fast. Did I make you sick? Okay, so I said 3 choices. Which one is more reusable? All right, well, before we go through the choices, let's define what reusability means. That is an earmark of quality code. When we talk about modularity, we're talking about reusability. And that is a cornerstone of anything that you're doing. You want to be able to reuse code over and over and over and over and over again without touching the code. All you want to do is send in the configuration to it, right? So that it can just go and do its work. That makes it reusable. If you have to touch it, if you have to go in and change it, then it's not reusable anymore. Okay. So reusable pieces of code means it's something you put into your code that you do not have to change. All you have to do is configure it. So let's look at reusability. I said choice A is the one that you picked from the first problem set. Well, we know it's not that guy. Let's get rid of that guy so we're not confused. Bye. So this one, is this reusable? Okay, well, not really. It's very limited. Why? Because it's only checking for one element. Just one element. That's it. How many times are you going to do that in a project? Really? How many use cases do you have in your projects where you have an array and you only want to know that it only has just one element? Anytime you see something hard-coded like that, that number 1 right there, that's a clue to you. That's not very reusable. Oh, whoops. So that should be abstracted away and passed in as another parameter, either through a configuration file or whomever is calling this particular function, so that now you've expanded its usability. You can use it in so many other cases. So that's what the next 2 do. See how we've now renamed it. Array contains a number of elements. You give it the argument to check to see, yep, I'm an array. And how many elements do you want to check for? You can set a default here. So I want to count, and am I equal to the number of elements that I've specified? That one simple little change made it reusable. Cool. Now, when I come down and I look at B, well, we already know that this one, yes, it's reusable, but the quality earmarks are not there because of this. So this is our answer right here, and that was B. All right. So let's move on down. Code challenge number 2 was, very simply, using the function name that we just selected from that choice, we want to replace out the code in our new function. Okay, well, first of all, I need to copy this and put it into core. So I'm going to pick that up, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to put it, actually, let's put it above. Why not? I'll put it right there. Okay. So we know that with this guy, we want to replace this out because now we just got rid of that. So let's do that. Let's go and grab this and let's replace this. Boom. All right. Just from that one little change, you don't care what this guy is doing. You don't need to look inside the black box or inside the engine. It's telling you when I call this function, array contains number of elements. Okay. If I want to go ahead and be specific, I can say excuse me, I can say, does this argument have one element? And that's what it's going to give back to you. For example, if you use isArray, do you need to go and look in PHP core into the code itself and understand what isArray is doing underneath engine? No, you just know it returns, yeah, I'm an array, or no, I'm not. So if this name does not make sense to you, call it whatever so that it's purposeful. It tells you what it's doing. All right. Now we're going to deal with these two, the last two checks. So let's go ahead and move on. Problem set number 3. Okay. Hold on one second. I got to get my head screwed on right. I have 2 screens going here. The beauty of live. Okay, problem set number 3. So we know our code is starting to take shape. Now, what I want to do is, you know what I should do here is I'm just going to put this back. Hold on one sec. I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to put that back. Okay. And I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to come down and let's start rewriting this baby. We're going to do that. And I'm going to say return false. Again, you can have it all in line if you want, if that makes more sense to you. Like I said, I like to do a quick check and bail out. That's just the way I like to work. And then I do the rest of my check versus having one great big huge this and if that and in this or that. It just seems a little bit harder to read to me. So now what we're going to do is we are going to refactor this baby right here. So this would be check what? 3 and 4. We already refactored check 1 and 2. Now we're going to refactor check 3 and 4. So what is this guy doing? Well, it now is trying to figure out if I'm an object wrapped in an array. That's what I'm doing. Okay. So hold on one sec while I get a little drink of water. We're going to discuss that one. So in this problem set, I gave you a couple of different examples of code. I said, which is more readable? And let's come back over to here. And I've got this code down here, and it's easier if I unwrap it for you so that you can see. Hold on one sec. So I gave you 3 choices. Let's start with choice number 1. What's behind choice number 1? All righty. And of course, that's not lining up. So here's what I'm going to do instead. Let's just come over to here. There we go. So this is choice A. Choice A says, we already replaced that out. We have that. So now we can look at is set. What's the quality earmarks of this one? Okay. So if I come down through this, I can see that, yep, I'm checking this and I'm checking that, but then I'm returning true and false again. Didn't I already give you that pattern? And I said, but this is returning true or false. So therefore, we don't want choice A. That is a repeating pattern. That is wet. That is not dry. So skip over that one. Let's come down to the next one, B. Oh, that's it. This one actually is okay. It's okay. It's a little verbose, but because up here we're already bailing out, it makes sense that you could also bail out here if you wanted. You could say, okay, if the first element is not set, then return false. Yeah, you can go ahead and bail out from that one too, and then do your last check. So you've broken up all of them into individual, if this, nope, if that, nope. Oh, I did get down to here, so go ahead and return that. That's okay. It's personal preference if you want this one or you want that one. It doesn't matter which one that you choose, okay? This one to me is a little bit easier to read because now there's no inverting of states, right? All that you have to do is say, if I'm this, yep, or and I'm this, okay? and then I'll return it. So, yep, the first element is keyed at 0, and yes, I am an object, then I'll return true. All right. So therefore, I would say if I chose this, I would choose C. But like I said, B is okay also. It's up to you if you want to use these not states. That's completely up to you. Sometimes I know some folks will say, that makes my head hurt. Then don't use them. Do it like this. If that's easier for you to read, then do it like that. That makes perfect sense. So you're trying to achieve readability. So let's go ahead and put that into our code. What we want is this guy right here. And it's that guy right there. So the way that we refactored it was we just broke it out. That was it. We broke it out. And see, look what we got. Instead of this big, long, for conditional check, which is so hard to read, if I come over to here, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't need to go and look at that function to know what's going on. Treat it like an is set, is array, is object. You just know that what comes back, true or false, contains an object wrapped in array. If yes, if that's true, then boom, off you go. You're going to do this next line. If false, boop, you're going to come down here to the else and you're going to do that. And we're going to deal with this in the next episodes as to what's going on here. So don't worry about that right now. You're only focused here. This is more readable. This is more reusable. This is higher quality. Okay? If I come over to the function because I'm that type of developer and I want to know what's under the hood, I come in here. I can now get rid of this. I can read this and I can go, okay, does the array contain a number of elements that I specify, which is, does it contain one element? Yep, it does. Come down to here. Nope, it doesn't. Get out of there. Very simple. And then do these last two checks. All right. So I've talked my ear off. I'm sure you guys are sick of listening to me talk. Let's see if anybody has any questions. No questions. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, there they are. I just had to click on the tab. Hi, Casper. Okay, why would you want to send an array wrapped into that? Why wouldn't you just use send the object or else? I don't know why, Casper. I don't specifically know why that check is in there, if it's something legacy that's going on, or if there's something within cores events that's causing it to occur that they want to unwrap it. If you're doing it within your code, why would you wrap it in an array? Right? Why would you do that? You wouldn't. The only thing that I can discern from this is that they're doing a query. And if you do a query to the database, the data that you get back is what? It's an array. And then within that array, it has the objects. So my guess, without sitting here and tracing it out, which you could do, you could put this into PHP Storm and then just put a stop point right there. And you could say, anytime that thing fires, stop me, so that I can then evaluate and reverse engineer which event caused that to occur. So sorry that I can't give you an actual specific, because if you were to do it, if you were to write the code, unwrap it yourself. Why would you send that in? Or maybe you just deal with it in a wrapped, the way that the data is coming in. Boy, that was tough for me to say. Okay, so hi, Jackie. Can you give us a practical example? Well, I just went through that. The only example that I can come up with is, like I said, where you're querying the database and it is wrapped in an array and you're wanting to unwrap it, but you didn't want to unwrap it in your own code. You wanted to send it through an action. Can I think of a specific event of a specific edge case why you'd want to do that? No, I can't off the top of my head. I would actually, if I want to send you an object, I would unwrap it and send you an object. I wouldn't expect core to do this for me. So therefore, there's something in core, whether it's still there now or it used to be, that it needed this specific little piece of code here for that. The majority of times, this is never going to be there, right? You're just going to instead just assemble up all of the arguments passed and prepare them for being passed off to the registered events, all the registered callbacks. Sorry about that. All the registered callbacks. So you prepare your arguments before you even call do action in your own code. So sorry I couldn't give you a specific on that one. I'm sure in time as we go through core, I'm hoping that we stumble across which one is actually having that occur. All right, so it looks like I don't have any more questions. I can't believe I spent 36 minutes talking about one line of code. Huh. Either I'm a really windy gal or there was just really a lot of stuff to talk about there. Now, what we're going to do over the next 2 episodes is this code right here. Let me highlight it. All of this code. Whoops, not the sort. We're not to that yet. This code right here, we are going to refactor that baby. Yes, we are. We're going to go through why you want to refactor it. Not only here, but it affects this line of code and this particular function too. Not only in do action, but also in apply filters. So we're going to continue on. It's going to take us a while to completely refactor this entire function and its twin, apply filters. But there's only so much we can cover in 20 to 30 minutes. And I want to make sure it gets in your head and it sticks there. So if you guys have any more questions, you know where to find me on Slack. Just come on over and ask me questions. I'm there to help. All right. Everybody, have a wonderful, productive day. Let's get out there and do some coding. See you later. Bye.